I'm a disabled person with cerebral palsy. Uh, that means I'm one among the few people whom random strangers from roadside would come and ask, "Hi, what's your name?" and what happens. That happens usually, so I have to first check my waist down to see they are not meant that my zipper is open or I have stepped on a cow dung or something else. And then I understand, okay, they are asking about my disability, and then I give them some reply. So it's usual. I grew up in a lower middle class family. Uh, there were nobody inspirational for a disabled child like me. So I usually turned to movies and I wanted to become the hero, like every other child. And I watched the movies. I wanted to become the auto rickshaw driver with a gangster past and all. So that didn't happen. So I became an academic and I wrote few articles criticizing those movies about the portrayals of disability. And I am like, yes, revenge time. What happened with me was, however, I could see the movies, there were no relatable people like me, visible in those movies. Uh, they were all perfect body, and that made me feel somehow my body was abnormal, and I was very sad because I couldn't fight, I couldn't run, I couldn't jump, so I am not the hero type. So I was sad. I'm a 90s kid, so my primary source of movies were Sunday evening shows in Doordarshan. And on one such Sunday evening show, for the first time in my life, I saw a movie where there was one little child whom I could relate somehow because his body had some condition that was similar to me. That movie was Agashadut. It's about a small family, and the youngest of the children has polio. So, spoiler alert, as the story goes, mother dies. Every one of her children are adopted by some wealthy family, and the youngest one is left alone. So, I was a little child, you could imagine. I cried all along the movie. I cried all through the night. And my biggest fear was, what if my mom dies and nobody is there to adopt me? This visual thing had so much deep impact. Then on, I watched so many movies where some characters have some disability. I started noticing these patterns and I came to understand that majorly there are two types of portrayals. One is the disabled sufferer, where the disabled character is going through all the darkest sufferings one can imagine. And the second type of portrayal is the inspiration. For me, I felt somehow both these portrayals are wrong because one, our lives are not full of suffering. We have our own normalcy also. Our body is normal for us. So it's being disabled is not always painful for one thing. And second thing, I was not okay with being inspirational. People will come to me, Sabrieta, you are so much inspirational. Thank you for what? Being existing there, staying there? No. So I managed to go to school, managed to go to college, managed to climb all those stairs and go to places, and that made me inspirational. No, I was not okay with that. These barriers was positioned before me by the system, and I somehow managed to get over it. And the barriers are there. Just because I got over it doesn't mean it vanished. So I have to address these barriers, not the inspirational part of it. So I was not okay with it. So both these portrayals were not okay with me, and there was something missing. And I noticed that most of these movies were about a single character, life of a single character, the journey of them through the disability, the state of disability. and somebody overcome their disability, like the portrayal in Chandralekha, where Mohanlal is singing some Carnatic song, and uh, Soman is the doctor. He says, come on, and Sukanya gets up from the wheelchair. That's that easy to overcome disability. I have a better disability. I have my own daughter. Only thing missing is Mohanlal and Carnatic music. People somehow understood, like going to disabled people and telling on their face that you can do it and come on, makes us motivated and get to overcome disability and things like that. These all silly notions come through movies, and we trust movies because we see things, we trust what we see, and that's the power of movies. That's why I feel addressing these things very important. And coming down that path, I again notice this pattern that singling out these things, singling out the disability or disabled person from the system means disability becomes the person's burden, not a social condition. Because if you show a community of disabled people, a group of disabled people, the narrative shifts. The narrative shifts, then the question becomes why the school didn't have stairs or ramps, why the office room didn't have accessible bathrooms, why the library didn't have audiobooks. So the system, it becomes responsible when the narrative becomes about the community. So the mainstream movies didn't want us to do that subconsciously, because the narration itself is ableistic. The narration itself is against disability. One thing. Second thing, it fills the disabled person with guilt. So much guilt that the person themselves hate their body. They are criticizing themselves because they cannot overcome the physical state of disability or mental state of disability. The third thing, have you noticed this? Mainstream Malayalam movies have always reflected social change. Like in the early 70s, Malayalam movies had a common pattern of mainstreaming the working class struggles. Late 80s, in Kerala, the feminist movement became stronger. So the feminist collective became a part of narrative. In Kerala has a vast history of disability rights struggles. Kerala is one of those few states where in the early 1980s, when India didn't have a disability rights law, we have 1% disability reservation for disabled people. This happened through a week-long non-cooperation struggle. So it was from Kerala Federation of the Blind and other disabled communities, NGOs. So such efforts were there, such struggles were there, and they took fasting to another level. A week-long fasting forced the government to employ Omana Kunyama Commission, who inquired into the depths of the situation of disabled people in Kerala, and that reserved us 1% reservation in late 80s itself. So it was a landmark disability rights struggle. And from there to last few years, during COVID, we were constantly struggling. We were constantly going through active protests. Like in 2021, Mancheri Nagarasabha had an accessible toilet which was too steep, and nobody, even the wheelchair users, couldn't enter the toilet. It was not in an usable condition. So the Wheelchair Users Federation had a protest. We were struggling to get our basic rights, our rights to access, our rights to education, our rights to dignity. our rights for having a neat, usable toilet. So such struggles are real in our community, and each disabled person is going through this. We think of ourselves as singled out, and this mainstreaming media conditioning is feeding to it. That's why having the community narrative in a popular media such as movie is very important. So all through these struggles, what is happening? What is the movie's side is showing about disability? We had our access to public travel through years of legal battle. What is the movie is showing? Movie showing Dulquer Salman is stopping a metro bus for Parvati Tiruvatu and lifting her and getting into the bus. So that is heroism. Here is a community fighting through years and years legal battle. So this is wiping the history of the community plus individualizing a collective struggle. Both of the things are happening. And that is kind of pushing our struggle as a community backward. When we are together, a community of disabled people, we are wacky, we are weirdos, we are nerds, we are all kinds of things. No. And we inspire each other rather than we inspire a non-disabled person or an able-bodied person to pursue ourselves, to push ourselves one step further. Our happinesses are small, simple things, but it's not limited to those small, simple things. If I knew in my childhood that there is this community of disabled people similar like me, I wouldn't have gone through such a trauma. I could feel that I'm not alone. I have similar people. My struggle is not single handed. My struggle is not my mistake. It's not my body's mistakes. All these reassurances would happen. If you are telling our stories, tell it honestly. If you are telling our stories, include us. Okay? In writing department, include us. In direction department, include us. In the cast, include us. At least reserve the disabled roles for us. Because nobody can portray the disabled characters as sincerely as a disabled person, right? What the non-disabled person does is mere imitation, right? What change will it bring? Have you seen this movie Amar Akbar Anthony? Yes, there is this character by Jayasuriya, Amar, who has polio again. The character of this disabled person, Amar, was a fresh air for me because he was unapologetically funny, because there was no sympathy, because there was no burden of telling message, and he was being himself. You know why did this happen? Because the script was written by a real life disabled person, Bibin George, who later became a hero. So there are such sincere attempts which showed the community as such. Films like Happy Journey, where Jayasuriya plays the role of a blind cricketer. It's the story of Indian blind cricket team. So it's an important marking again in the field of disability rights and in the field of disability sports. And there is this very funny film, Adbhuta Dweep. Just imagine a huge land full of disabled people, and every accessory is made by them. Every road, every house, everything, each and every bite of that land is created by disabled people for disabled people, and every piece of it is accessible for them. And that's such a vast opening for Malayalam cinema, and Malayalam cinema missed the narrative. Malayalam cinema missed that narrative for reimagining it from a commercial point of view. There is a film in titled Guru, where Mohanlal falls into a mountain of snow and comes down into a village of people who are completely blind. It's very philosophically driven, very award-winning type of movie. Adbhuta Dvipa is a spoof of Guru, I feel. But still, blindness as an allegory is very harming for disabled people as a community, because they mean that the real blindness is not there, real disability is not there. And for us, it is very much real, like anything. So allegorical meanings are very harmful for disabled community, while Vinayan has subverted that disability trope into something which commercial cinema could master and make it into success. That's that. Such changes happening in Malayalam cinema, such changes happening in Indian cinema. We should embrace such changes. And why am I insisting on changing such systems? Because if the narrative changes, the work system should change, the laws should change, the legal agreements should change, and all these things change will bring up a productive environment, which makes the film fraternity a more inclusive place. And remember the child who cried watching Akashaduta in the beginning. Such children are present even now, and it will be a gift for them, an element of peace for them and for their mind. Thank you for everyone.